I sat clutching a bag of peanut M&Ms at the age of 3, I had no idea how my life would change with a train and plane ride from Seoul, Korea to Honolulu, Hawaii. Honestly, I don't remember a whole lot about my birthplace. I can remember, though, growing up with a large family, sleeping on the floor, and watching kung fu movies on a big screen. When I arrived in Hawaii, I found a family of 4 waiting for me. A tall American man wearing glasses with a mustache, a petite woman with a beautiful smile, and 2 curious boys, one with golden blonde hair, the other with dark brown hair. I didn't truly understand back in 1983 what I was doing at the Hawaii airport or who these people were. It didn't take long, though, for me to learn that this was my new family, the Fothergill family. I was born in Seoul, Korea on May 18, 1980. Prior to beginning my personal journey several months ago, I only knew a few things about my adoption and my birth family. From what I remember, what I was told, my biological mother was young, and I've been told that in Korea, babies born out of wedlock are scorned as well as their mothers. From what I know, my birth mother gave me up to her sister, who raised me for a couple of years and later put me up for adoption. I eventually was placed in a loving family. These are my parents, Steve and Christina. These are my 2 older brothers, Randy and Tony, my constant protectors, even until now. Back in the early 80s, my parents had some marital problems while living in Barbers Point, Hawaii. Fortunately, they stayed together and reconciled, and that's where I come into the picture.
We wanted to have a little girl, and that was a surefire way of getting a little girl. And Chris was aware of an agency or some ladies that you were working with that knew the adoption agency, so we just started the process.
There was just a lot of extra love that I guess had been burning in our hearts, and we decided to adopt and share the love that we had once again for each other.
But we did want a little girl.
For the next 9 months, my mom and dad began the adoption process. From screenings to reams of paperwork, background studies to interviews, the adoption agency wanted to make sure that they were fit to adopt me. My brothers apparently were set on having a little sister too.
They would like to have, and they wanted a little girl. They wanted a little sister. And I didn't want to go to the baby stage, to the diaper stage, because weren't they 4 and 6, I think, at that time when we initiated the process. And so I wanted to be able to be a part of what was going on in the family. So 3 years old.
My parents say the adoption agency went to great lengths to make sure they were my perfect match.
I remember specifically saying that I enjoyed music. And Mindy, when she came to us, sang all the time. So they really took into consideration our request. For us, they requested and suggested, I should say, that we just get some pictures together. And that's what we did. We got a little album together, and I wrote things down, and we sent that with her back to Korea so Mindy could see us and see the home that she would be coming to. And that was how we got familiar with Mindy. They just sent us a picture as well. We didn't go and select her. They selected her for us.
When I landed in Hawaii, my new family was there waiting, as were other families who were adopting too. Because of the pictures in the album, even at the age of 3, I knew exactly who to run to. I don't remember being scared, and actually I think I ran into my mom's arms, and well, like they say, the rest is history. But that's what you're waiting to hear.
It was just kind of like going to the delivery room. We went to the airport, and this it was a kind of a large lady, I remember, that was holding her and basically just handed her to Chris, and that was it. And it was just kind of easy. We just went. It's just like meeting somebody at the airport, and Mindy just went home with us.
I arrived in sunny Hawaii to join my new family. Boy, was I a sight to see. I was decked out in a maroon long-sleeve wool dress and stockings.
She came, I opened up my arms, and I picked her up, and I carried her all the way to the car, and she was pretty paunchy. She was a paunchy little girl when she came.
But the boys were with us too.
I didn't speak any English when I arrived to Hawaii, but my parents say I was determined to get my point across.
She was creative. I remember one time when she was outside in the backyard, I thought it was so cute. She was stooping like they do, the Asian people, and she had picked up two sticks, and she was using chopsticks. And I mean, that was strange to me. But she was picking up things with these sticks as chopsticks outside in the backyard.
She picked up the language so quick that I don't ever remember her not speaking some English. Even from, I don't remember her not speaking English. She never spoke Korean to me at all. And one of the funny things, she would pick up the words with the kids she would play with, and Randy and Tony, which are our children. We had geckos and chameleons in Hawaii, a lot like here. And when she saw a gecko on the porch one day, she said a dinosaur. And it was, if you look at a little gecko, it looks like a dinosaur. And
she had a book.
She just didn't know the difference in the size. We thought that was really funny.
During the first few years, there were plenty more funny stories I hope you'll share with me as I go on finding my roots. Living in an environment eating lots of rice and vegetables, sleeping on the floor, my adoptive family helped me adapt to the American way. As a little girl growing up not speaking a lick of English, I found ways to get what I wanted despite the language barrier.
She was just quick at learning. She adapted at everything. So they were amazed with her at the preschool there. And she was very creative. Because she did not speak English, she jabbered all the time, and she'd sing all the time in Korean. But the boys taught her her very first word, and it was monster. We had laughed about that, but monster was the first word. And in fact, they named her. We could have given her any name. Her name was Min, because our one son is Randy and our other one is Tony. They said, let's name her Mindy.
Well,
so they all ended up in Y.
Mork and Mindy then, too.
So she's Mindy.
With my new name and my new family, my parents began the process for me to be naturalized as a U.S. citizen. On August 23, 1984, I was officially an American citizen and officially a Fothergill. Because my dad was in the Coast Guard, we left Hawaii a year later and moved to Seminole, Florida, where I became a minority. From elementary school through my sophomore year, I was different. I didn't have the white skin, the blonde hair, or the blue eyes, so needless to say, growing up was quite difficult. With so much to fight against, I had to learn that life is what you make of it, and I couldn't let people's opinions break me. I was one of maybe 2 Asian kids in elementary school, one of possibly 4 in middle school, and one of about 6 in high school in Florida, so I was used to people teasing me about my slanted eyes, the shape of my face, everything, because I was different. Unfortunately, it took me years later to realize that it's okay to be different, and in fact, it's actually kind of nice to be so unique. For others who I went to school with who didn't necessarily fit the mold too, it was easier for them to understand that I was adopted and easier for them to accept who I was. My dad recalls one incident in elementary school when he came to eat lunch with me.
Mindy then was turned around and was talking to someone next to her, and the little boy leaned over the table. Psst, you want to get my attention, says, she's adopted, isn't she? It was like, they didn't even really know. She was Korean, and of course I'm not, and it was just like, and it was no big deal, and that's kind of the way I always felt about it. So
my dad says growing up he wasn't sure if I even knew that I was Korean. Not literally, of course, but with so much exposure to the American culture, in a way I let my Korean heritage disappear. My mom was always my shoulder to cry on when I would come home after getting teased. Looking back, though, it all made me stronger.
When we moved to Florida, Mindy was different. And she had a lot of adversity to overcome. So I just see that Mindy has progressed through life, overcoming. She's an overcomer. That's the way I look at her.
Even when I moved to Guam in 1996, I had no desire to meet my birth mother. In fact, when my boss Sabrina approached me about the whole personal journey idea and asked if I wanted to find my biological mother, my answer was a definite no. One dinner and a talk with my dad, though, changed everything. Over seafood at the Hyatt's La Miranda, my dad told me there was nothing to fear about finding my biological mother, and like everything else he and my mom had taught me growing up, he told me to confront and conquer my fears. I agreed, and I have to admit I changed my mind at least a half a dozen times before I finally set my mind to work on finding my birth family. Deep down, I wanted answers to hundreds of questions I've pondered over the years.
I think it's interesting the number of people you know that are adopted, and what adoption does for and to some people, and how some people come out of it better or worse than others. I think for Mindy, in her situation, this can be a platform that she can really teach others, open up doors for other people that maybe have the same fears that she's had. And it's going to help her, I honestly think. I'm not sure that she wants to remember. I don't think she wants to be, I don't even know if she knows she is Korean at times. I mean, the fact is that and the way I see her is I don't see her any different.
My mom, too, was very supportive of the idea. In fact, my parents had made it clear when we moved to Guam that we were in the perfect location for me to return to Korea.
I honestly always thought that someday she'd just be inquisitive enough to want to search out her roots. But we never pushed her and never really made that a goal that we thought she should have. So it's always been up to her. And when we first came to Guam in 1996, we thought this is going to be a really good opportunity, and we thought that she would have probably done it before. And she's had numerous opportunities to do it before, but she has chosen to do it now.
My mom says it's no mistake that we moved to Guam. She believes the Lord had a reason for our relocation, especially for me, to open the doors to something I'd buried for so many years. Beginning in April of this year, I timidly opened the doors to find out more about myself. Not even 2 weeks into the search, though, I was already questioning if I was making the right move to find my roots. When checking my email in the last few years, I've seen dozens of advertisements offering searches to find anyone in the world. You know, the find anyone, get to really know somebody, those kind. Up until this year, I always deleted the messages, wishing I didn't get so much spam. My mindset quickly changed, though, as I sought out my birth mother. I didn't know her name, I didn't know if she still lived in Korea, so I didn't have much to go on. Being a reporter, though, it wasn't hard to dig up my curious instincts, and so I began getting on the internet and searching through my adoption files looking for some clues to my birth mother. When I was 3, I was adopted through the Holt Foundation in Seoul, Korea. The foundation was started by an American couple decades ago, and it still assists with adoptions around the world. With some help from my boyfriend, John Patrick, I was determined to find out whatever I could about my birth mother, even if I didn't know her name or where she lived. The poor guy put up with my stressing out episodes and kept me thinking positive throughout the search.
She was very, I would say, antsy, kept getting on me, kept getting mad and all that. But I was like, hey, take your time, slow down, take a breath. Don't worry, we'll get this thing done. Don't worry, we'll find her. It took a lot of stress on her. Days where she's crying, tearing. I ask her, Sunshine, what's wrong with you? Oh, nothing. Why the gloomy face? Well, she's Sunshine to me, but when I know my Sunshine's gloomy face, I know something's wrong. So I always ask her, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with you? And this is all, it's my personal journeys. It's really disturbing me, stressing me out. And I said, well, let's talk about it. What do you need? What do you need to do? And, I'll try to help as much as I can.
I had no idea how stressful the whole searching and reunion thing was going to be, but I was determined to make this a reality. In February of this year, I sent an email to the Holt Foundation hoping to get some help. even though I wasn't really sure that I could go through with meeting my birth family. I never received a response, so I got discouraged. A few months later, though, I decided I was really going to pursue a reunion with my birth mother, like I pursue some of my stories. Don't give up until you get some answers, I told myself. So I emailed the post-adoption services at the Holt Foundation in Seoul, Korea, and impatiently waited for a response. Several days later I did, and I was told to email someone else who could finally help me. Finally, after several emails, I received a response that opened the door to finding out how I came into this world and who took care of me before I was adopted. I contemplated the whole idea of a reunion at least 1,000 times. Was I ready for this? Could I be emotionally prepared to meet my biological mother? What was she like? Do I look like her? I admit I was scared. I didn't know what to feel. An angel sent from God, Yang Hae's son, responded to my email and told me that she knew who my birth mother was and where she lived. With my case number, she confirmed my identity and promised to contact my birth family and tell them I was searching for them. I waited several weeks, coming into work and anxiously checking my email for some response. Finally, on my birthday, I received a fax and an email. Yang told me she spoke with my grandfather and said my grandmother had stomach cancer and had just had an operation. A week later, Yang emailed again to tell me that she had broken the news to my birth mother and my grandmother. She told me my mom was married and had children. Yang said they agreed to meet me. She then asked me to send photos and email a letter to my birth mother so we could acquaint ourselves before the actual meeting. We scheduled the reunion for August since that was my official adoption day, or as I like to say, my second birthday. I sat amazed after reading Yang's email. This was really going to happen. My stomach began turning and I became emotional. I was going to meet my birth mother and go back to Korea, the motherland. With my reunion date set to meet my birth mother, my grandmother, and my aunt, I began stressing out about how my trip would come together. My dad offered to purchase my ticket since it was something my parents had always wanted me to do. I wanted my parents to come to Korea with me too, to experience everything I would. They agreed and were excited about the trip. I think at times more excited than I was. My boyfriend arranged to go with me to be part of my support group. John Patrick knew I was scared about the whole thing.
The preparation for the Korea trip was extremely frustrating. I mean, the problems for me is I had no problem with just getting the approval to take off, the time to go to Korea with her so that I can accompany her. It's just getting the money to purchase the ticket and the preparation for her that she had to endure was waiting for her to see if she got a ticket, a place to stay, the whole foundation, make sure they made arrangements for the meeting when we did arrive. All that was just, piled up in all of this craziness that she was trying to do all for herself. And, I'm just there to be by her side. All I do is have her squeeze my hand and say, ouch, sunshine, ouch, come on. Let go a little, let go and relax.
Before I knew it, August 26th was just around the corner, and all of a sudden things were so out of control. I didn't have a place to stay, the airline was overbooked, so my cameraman wouldn't be able to go, and while I was stressed out, completely crying, getting angry, just about experiencing every kind of emotion possible, but mostly frustration. My mom was always just a phone call away, though, telling me things would be okay. She was constantly praying for me and for my trip, asking God to work everything out. He did, too. Like an angel sent from God, my friend Mike Hom helped make my whole trip possible. With Mike's help, my photographer Carlito was able to go with us. Mike also helped work out hotel arrangements at the Grand Hyatt Hotel deep in the heart of Seoul. I have to thank Hyatt Guam as well as KUAM's account executives Betty Ann and Chris for their support in making my personal journey a reality. With everything set, I was ready to go, well, as ready as I was going to be at least, to meet my birth mother and see where I came from. My last stress fit came when I couldn't find my passport, though. I literally tore my room apart in search of that small blue book, and probably around 2 o'clock the night before I was supposed to leave, I found it in the exact place it was supposed to be, and finally started packing. Throughout my search, I kept telling myself I didn't want to meet my biological father, only my birth mother. I always remembered being told that he was married and had children when he got together with my birth mom, and while I didn't have any interest to know who he was, but little did I know what I recalled and what was reality were two completely different things. I would learn the truth soon enough as I made my final preparations for my trip back to the motherland in search of finding my roots. We arrived at the Guam International Airport around 1:30 Thursday morning. We're going on the trip, and don't ask how I feel because I'm pretty anxious right now. That's the only feeling I have.
I'm high on coffee.
And it's early in the morning. I'm supposed to be sleeping right now.
And I'm high on coffee.
And he's high on coffee. Oh, we're looking forward to whatever happens. So we'll see. My mother, of course, the photo taker of the family, wanted to stop and take pictures along the way.
I'm ready for the adventure. Yes, I'm all rested up and excited about what's going to happen, which we have no idea. So we're expecting good things.
I had to buy a ticket, which is very unusual for me.
As you'll see in future segments, my dad is the avid jokester. We boarded the plane and I spoke with my grandfather and my Nana and Papa over the phone, who wished me well and gave their blessings for my reunion. I fell asleep on the trip, peaceful rest after weeks of stress, curiosity, and frustration. When I awoke, we were hovering over Korea as the sunrise was peeking its colorful head on the horizon. We've reached the motherland. Oh yeah, before I forget, the food on the airplane. What can I say? I've never had a breakfast that consisted of an omelet, snow peas, and baked beans. The menu should have been a clear indication that food in a foreign country was going to be interesting, especially in Korea, since I did not like Korean food, especially kimchi. So we landed and boarded the KL limousine bus for about an hour-long trip from the Incheon airport to the Grand Hyatt Seoul. I fell asleep again. I was tired. Of course, my always observant photographer got me at my worst. We put up to the hotel. It was magnificent. inside, the beautiful wood interior, the artwork, even the concierge, it all made me feel like royalty. Everyone was in business suits, and I felt sort of out of place in my t-shirt and jeans, but I checked into the hotel. And was soon off to room 1052, my new home for the next 5 days. With my own concierge to help me with my luggage, she opened the door to my room, complete with a king-size bed, a down comforter, and then I pulled the drapes to a breathtaking view of the city.
Oh my goodness.
How nice.
It was such a beautiful view of the city overlooking Itaewon, the popular shopping tourist district. Today, I was one of millions of people in my birthplace looking for one specific person, my birth mother. Friday was the big day, the day I would meet the person who brought me into this world and who had the answers to all of my questions, including the real reason I was put up for adoption. As I slept that night, I realized the stress and the anticipation was all part of me finding my roots. I woke up on my reunion day with so many jitters. I put on my clothes wanting to look perfect for my birth mother with a white top with a bow. It was like I was the gift to be presented at today's reunion.
As good as it gets.
With a photo album of me growing up and a poem for my birth mother, we were off to meet my parents at the Hamilton Hotel. A 20-minute subway trip away to Hapjeong, it was finally happening. I wasn't feeling very emotional when we got into the subway, but when I showed my mom my gifts, she began to tear, and I sat there choking back all of the emotions that had been bottled in for so many years. We got off at Hapjeong and knew we were in the right spot with the Holt Children's Foundation sign. We were in the right place. My mom took pictures again and we proceeded to walk out of the subway. My dad realized he was in a foreign country when asking someone on the street for directions.
You speak English? Is that a no?
That was a no.
We did get directions, and as we walked toward the Holt Foundation, my eyes became locked on a woman in a long black dress and an older lady. We caught each other's stares, and the thought crossed my mind. Was this my birth mother? Was this the woman I've waited to meet? Is this the woman who gave me up so I would have a better life? Questions that would all be answered as I continued in search of finding my roots. While I pondered questions in my mind about whether the woman in black I had just passed was my birth mother, my parents and I continued walking in search of the Holt Foundation, the location of the reunion. After some more walking, we found Yang Hae's son, my post-adoption services worker, who had been instrumental in making the reunion possible.
Hi. Yang? Mindy. Yang? Nice to meet you. This is my mom. This is Yang. This is the lady that's been helping. This is my dad.
Hi, good to meet you. Hi.
This is my boyfriend. And this is my cameraman.
Yang took us into a small room. A box of tissues in the middle of the table was a sign of what was to come. The months of waiting and the years of wondering and suppressing my emotions and doubts, it was all coming to a close. Sitting in the tiny meeting room in Seoul, Korea, my mind was filled with questions and anxiety. This was it. It was finally happening. After I signed the Hold guest book, my curiosity was killing me inside. I needed answers, and before I knew it, I was blurting out my questions.
So, how did you find her?
We have record about them, and we have, kind of identifying record of them, so it was easy to trace them.
And what did she say when you talked to her?
At first, I think she was kind of shocked. I didn't really talk to your mom first. I talked to your grandmother, and then she contacted your mom. So I think it was like some, kind of after we're talking with her, so she wasn't that shocked, and I talked to her. So, yeah, they were glad.
My eyes welled up with tears. I wasn't sure I was ready for what was coming next. Through the door, I could see two figures waiting to come inside. This was it, the moment I was waiting for, trying to prepare for. It was here, the reunion. I sat in the chair accompanied by my mom and dad and my boyfriend and was overwhelmed with emotion. After 21 years, I was going to be reunited with my birth family. I held back as many tears as I could, but they were coming like a flood. Yang gave me some time to take in all that was happening and left the room.
She's like the kindest, most gentle person you've ever met in your life. I mean, she's like an angel of mercy.
Very good description.
Yeah, it's a very emotional play.
We waited and waited. It was only a few minutes, but it felt like hours. When the door opened, two women stood looking at me. The same women I had just seen at the street corner just an hour before. We embraced and cried. The older woman who I was introduced to as my grandmother got a hold of me first, and Yang thought the lady in black was my birth mother.
우리 민경이 고기를 썩만 배워서 해주세요. 감사합니다.
So beautiful.
엄마 너무 이쁘대요.
엄마 아니야 이모인데.
에?
난 이모. 우리 엄마 언니는 오잖아요.
그래요? Oh, sorry, it's just your aunt.
This is my aunt.
엄마도 금방 고마워요.
Hi, how are you? Steve.
This is my mom.
엄마인 줄 알았어. 하셔가지고.
엄마 조금 몇 시간
She's coming.
She's coming.
So she
So
was
is
physical, right?
she the one that took care of me?
그러니까 엄마 아니야 이모 키우신.
키우는 내가 키우고 엄마 할머니가 키우고 같이 살았지.
She
근데
after your
키웠다고
aunt,
기억을 하나 봐.
your aunt was there. She was married at that time, so she was there.
잘 자라줘서 너무 이뻐.
Thank you for growing up so well.
Thank them.
Myung-jaw Park, my grandmother, and Kyum Ok Kim, my aunt.
Do you speak any? 아니 못한다는데. 그거는 바로 할 수 있지. She says your pronunciation is really good.
Could be hereditary.
얼굴 상해. 어렸을 때 상했네.
She says you have baby look.
얼굴 상해 어렸을 때 상했어.
Baby look?
아유, 엄마를 먼저 만났어야 되는 건데. 엄마는
누구나고 지금 내 이모를 했잖아.
This is the one I saw by the gas. I saw her
Oh
at
yeah.
the gas station.
She said you were constantly looking at her. I'm so sorry, I was my mistake.
Oh, it's
She was
okay.
your mom,
It's
so-
okay.
My grandmother told me that my grandfather was sick and was not able to make it for the reunion. She came to see me despite having stomach cancer. While my birth mother had not shown up for the reunion, my grandmother gave me some insight on the first few years of my life and why she decided to give me her first grandchild up for adoption.
Can you ask them if they ever wondered about me?
그러니까 여기에 대해서 궁금해하셨는지 그 전에
궁금해했죠. 많이 궁금해했죠. 내가 죽어버리고 정신을 잃었었어요. 죽어버리고 내가 내 정신이 아니었어.
after they placed you for adoption, she was she was not her,
또 잔짝잔짝 거릴 때 그래놓고 자다가도 막 찾으러 뛰어나오고 이래서 너무 가슴
she wasn't herself. She was looking for you and in the middle of the night, and she just woke up and looked for you. So for a while, she was not really. Your mom was not in a situation to raise you, so she raised you at the time. But her economic situation wasn't really good, and she had to work near the sea. They lived near the sea, so they thought you would be better to place you for adoption.
Let her know that from a very early age, we explained to Mindy that she was loved, and that's why.
Of course, with all the tears and the emotions, my dad was there to help break the ice.
Well, I just found out recently that she was adopted. I didn't even know.
Over the next 30 minutes or so, I showed them a photo album of me growing up. My boss Sabrina helped compile the photos during my stressful preparations for my trip. In turn, my aunt showed me a picture of my aunts and uncles and the woman I had been waiting to meet. I learned my birth mom had been married and had 2 daughters. Apparently, the marriage did not work out, and she was left to care for the 2 on her own. It had been some time, and I had doubts that my birth mom was even going to make it for the reunion. Before I knew it, though, there was another knock on the door.
여기 좀 잘 자랐는데 뭐 그래.
괜찮다고. 너무 잘 자랐잖아.
What is she? Thank you.
Her eyes filled with tears showed her heart. I knew she was sorry about giving me up for adoption. Over the next hour, she would provide me answers to dozens of questions burning inside of me. My birth mother would finally tell me the real story of my adoption and my birth father. As I looked at my birth mother in awe, the tears were overwhelming. This was the woman who brought me into this world, who I hadn't seen in 21 years. After a long embrace and tears, of course, I introduced her to my family.
This is my mom, Oma. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. 정말 감사합니다. 너무너무 감사합니다. 예쁘게 키워주셔서 정말 감사합니다. Thank you. 너무 예쁘게 키워주셨어요. This is my dad. Yes.
Hi,
감사합니다. 이렇게
my
키워주셔서
pleasure.
너무 멋있으세요. 응?
It's not my fault.
And this is my boyfriend. What did she say?
My birth mother showed me pictures of when she was younger and then pictures of my two sisters. Growing up with two older brothers, I had always wished for a sister, and now after 2 decades, I found out I had two.
That looks like me.
엄마 올 때 100일 때. 나 하나 있었어.
이건 누구?
나 100일 때.
This is her.
What is this?
네가 어릴 때 이랬어.
You looked like
I look like you.
My parents and boyfriend left the room for a while to leave me and my birth mom alone. Over the next few minutes, we sat holding hands, just looking at each other. My birth mother occasionally mumbled something in Korean. It was strange. We didn't need to say anything, yet it was as if our hearts were doing all the talking. Through my tears, we locked eyes. It was a beautiful moment, silence and tears. My post-adoption services worker Yang was the key to our language barrier. Because I didn't speak Korean and my mother didn't speak English, Yang helped interpret, telling me the true story of my adoption.
Can you tell her that I thank her for giving me up? It was a blessing.
근데 이 입양 이제 보내신 게 가슴 아프시고 그러시겠지만 지금 보니까 너무 잘 선택하신 거라고 감사한다고 그러고 자기한테는 이제 우리 양분을 만나서 이렇게 살게 된 게 축복이었다고.
Can you tell her that I don't have any hard feelings?
그러니까 뭐 원망 같은 거 전혀 안 한다고.
원망하는 애들 안 찾았을 거예요. 그죠?
She says if you had any bad feelings for her, then maybe you didn't really search for her. She looked after you for the early periods, and then because she had difficulty, and she asked your grandmother to look after you for like 1 year. At the time, it happened.
My birth mother explained that while she was gone working, she returned to find that I was gone. My grandmother and my aunt had given me up for adoption after realizing my birth mom was too young to take care of me.
Don't blame your grandmother.
Oh no.
It was her, best decision she could make for her daughter and for her
Everybody.
granddaughter.
Throughout my personal journey in seeking out my birth mother, I never had any intentions of finding my biological father. I really don't know why I didn't. I guess a part of it had to do with the fact that I didn't think he had any part in my growing up. I never knew why, but I always assumed it was because he didn't want to. I felt guilty, though, when I learned the truth about him.
Your father will be 50, 50 this year, but she passed away. She heard.
Who?
And he passed away.
My birth father?
She heard.
Yeah.
At the time, he was kind of soldier.
Mm-hmm.
We have several kinds of soldiers, Korean soldier and also American soldier who were stationed in Korea. There is one soldier who works for kind of both, and he was that kind of soldier at the time.
Did she talk to him after I was born, or?
그러면은 민경이가 태어나고 나서 또 같이 계셨어요?
아니.
그럼 언제
태어난 것도 몰랐어요. 나중에서 알았지 이제.
He didn't know that you were born.
낳지 말라 그랬었거든요. 근데 내가 키우겠다 해서 내가 낳은 거지.
They were not in a situation to be together, so but she made a decision to give birth to you, and she wanted to keep you, so she gave birth to you.
How was I as a baby?
다른?
How was I as a baby?
아기였을 때 어땠냐고.
이렇게 순했어요.
You were very easygoing.
그냥 모유를 먹였는데 젖 먹고 자고 그냥 굉장히 순했어요. 울지도 잘 안 하고.
She breastfed you, and after feeding you, just slept, and you didn't really cry a lot.
My birth mother told me that she and my father were very much in love. Unfortunately, their families didn't approve of them seeing each other, but they did for 4 years. I later learned my mother had gotten pregnant when my birth father left to the mainland to live with his aunt. He died 2 years after I was born in a motorcycle crash. My mother teared when she spoke of him. It was obvious she truly loved him. We spent the next half hour or so just making small talk. My birth mother said she was thankful for me and for my parents raising me so well. While I had stressed out for months about meeting her for the first time, it appeared she was just as nervous as I was about the reunion.
After she heard about you, she hasn't really slept well, because she thought a lot. There are a lot of questions, but she can't really remember what she wanted to tell you.
It was funny, I had the same feeling. I had so many questions going into the reunion, but I never wrote them down thinking it would be easy to recall them when it actually happened. I knew the questions would come back to me eventually. My birth mother told me my 2 half-sisters would accept me. They didn't know about me yet.
She's beautiful.
엄마 너무 이쁘다고. 진짜 이쁘세요. 그러면 아빠 닮았어요? 엄마 닮았어요?
아빠를 많이 닮았어요.
She says you look like your father a lot.
Yang, my interpreter, left the room and returned with my parents and my boyfriend. My aunt and grandmother returned a few minutes later after both going to get coffee. She held my hand looking at me with such admiration. Her smile told me she was proud of who I had grown up to be. My birth mother brought rice cakes, which in Korean tradition is eaten during a special occasion. I looked at the white powdery rice cake and wasn't sure I wanted to try it. I took a small bite and realized real quickly I didn't like what I was eating, but I chewed and chewed and chewed before swallowing the thing, chasing it down with a big gulp of coffee. Apparently the sticky rice cakes were going to take some getting used to. Well, we all tried the cakes, and I don't think any of us went for seconds, except for my cameraman who didn't really have a choice. My grandmother, the feisty one, made sure Carlito ate too, whether he liked it or not.
Carl.
I think she likes it.
You didn't have a choice on that one.
We know who's in charge.
My parents took the next few minutes telling them stories of me growing up.
Mindy's first word
English word her brothers taught her was monster.
Oh.
I thought it was dinosaur.
No, it was monster.
So who was monster?
just cartoon type figure, scary, spooky monster.
My aunt, grandmother, and birth mother were making plans for the rest of my trip. By the time the reunion was over, it was lunchtime. My mom and dad wanted to treat everyone for the special occasion, so we headed to a nearby Korean restaurant. Like everywhere in Korea, we walked. I was famished, but wasn't sure I was ready to give Korean food a try. On the way there, we met up with our new interpreter, Janet, a volunteer for the Holt Foundation.
My name is Janet.
Janet.
Easy.
Okay.
이분인데 또 연애했어요.
That's my best.
After taking off our shoes, we sat on the floor as dozens of plates of food were placed around on the table, and kalbi was cooking in the center grill. I liked the kalbi, but not the kimchi. When we were done eating, we agreed that we would go to my aunt's house to spend some more time together. I had no idea how long it was going to take to get there since she lived outside of Seoul. While riding in the crowded subway, I reflected on the reunion. I sighed a breath of relief and felt good. I had been blessed with two loving families. After getting off the subway, my birth mother grabbed my arm and put a gold bracelet she had been wearing on her own wrist on mine. She held my hand as we walked to a bus stop. It all felt so right. She completed a part of me that had been void for so many years. In the next few days, I would learn more and more about myself, my Korean culture, and my past. All answers to questions I needed to know. Following the emotional reunion, my birth family decided we'd go to my aunt's house to spend the afternoon. In a quaint two-bedroom apartment, we sat on the floor eating fresh fruit and nuts. We sat and talked about the Korean culture, customs, and a little about my past. After another Korean meal, which I have to admit I actually liked, I had to say goodbye to my grandmother, who I was not going to see again before leaving Korea. My grandmother had to tend to my grandfather, who was ill. The next day, my birth mother and I spent the day together with our interpreter, Janet. She took me to a palace where I used to play as a toddler. It was a beautiful place, neatly trimmed shrubs, beautiful temples that all used to be home to Korean royalty. John Patrick was with us, but left my birth mother and me to catch up.
Just watching her and her mom interact when we were at the palace grounds, walking hand in hand, and mom would always like hold her hand, look back on her back and pull her shirt down if her little bare back was showing, rubbing her arms, and just squeezing her. They would, she would just look at her, and I think the mom was just admiring what had God blessed her with. And how much she had missed all those years that she's been gone. And now to realize that she's a grown woman and a beautiful woman at that.
After a quick lunch, she took me to an art market where there were thousands of people on a single street buying artwork, eating traditional Korean foods. She bought me little trinkets and candy, all things I used to love as a child. It was a wonderful time, just me and my birth mom. I found out she was a wedding planner. My two sisters are 20 and 18 years old, and one is currently in college studying music, while the other is a senior in high school. The few hours we spent that day were amazing. It felt so right to be side by side with my biological mother. She agreed to meet me at the airport for our departure on Monday, leaving one day for shopping. On Sunday, I spent the day with my mom and dad shopping. Father hates to shop, but was gracious enough to go with us to sightsee. From the 11-story Technomart visit where they had every gadget and gizmo known to man to a trip to the Namdaemun shopping district, there were so many shoes, so many purses, hats, counterfeit items, everything you could possibly imagine. Walking on the busy sidewalks, I smelled fresh food being cooked on the street markets. I didn't know what half of it was and resolved that I wasn't brave enough to give any of it a try. Shopped out, I checked out of the hotel on Monday. I wore red and white, my birth mother's favorite colors when she was happy. Her other favorite color was black, but she said she'd only wear it when she was sad. My mom and dad met us at the hotel and we took the KAL limousine back to the Incheon airport. We met up with my birth mother and a little later we were joined by Janet, our interpreter, and my aunt. After a quick lunch, we all sat down for coffee and it all became too real. At that moment, I understood everything so clearly. My birth mother was here to say goodbye to her firstborn, something she never had an opportunity to do before. Through her tears, I realized it was as if she was reliving the moment when she learned I had been given up for adoption. For me, I felt like I was 3.5 again, crying because I was having to say goodbye. Of course, being much older, the tears felt more real as I fully understood the situation. My birth mother and I gazed into each other's eyes as tears started rolling down our faces. My parents left me to share a few intimate moments with her before I had to leave.
I think the biggest fear is over, all right, and it will be a walk of love. Yes. You're very special, and very important. You take care.
I was in a difficult position, one I admittedly never thought I would be in. My heart wanted to stay in Korea and spend countless hours with my birth mother to catch up on all the years we'd missed. She'd agreed to do an interview to talk about the reunion. I didn't watch the tape until yesterday.
아무 생각도 안 났어요.
I couldn't think about anything. I just felt like my heart was exploding.
그냥 가슴이 터질 것 같았어요. 반반이었어요. 그러니까 만난다는 그 기쁨.
I felt both feelings. Like I was really happy, but on the other side, I had a fear because I felt like something like a guilty. I couldn't sleep since then.
설레기도 하고 좀 그랬어요. 찾는다는 소리 들었을 때 조금
I didn't have any doubt that I will meet her. I was just happy because she was seeking for me, so I was really happy.
빨리 보고 싶은 생각밖에 없었어요. 글쎄 만나기 전에는 그냥 막연하게.
At first, I was just happy, but now I feel it was just a too short time to know her. So I wish I had more time with her.
할 말은 되게 많은데 너무 같이 있는 기간이 너무 짧다.
I have thousands of questions. At first, I wonder if she has some problems in her life, or I want to know her health. I mean, if she's well all the time or not, or how her work is going, that kind of thing.